everyone, it's author Sandra Wilson here in the Kindness Kangaroo Library for another Kangaroo tale. Kindness, what are we reading today? Today, the story I'm going to share is called Gertie Saves the Day, and it was written by Patricia Nespoli. And underneath in the description below, there'll be a link so you can get your own copy of Gertie Saves the Day to read with your friends. Are you ready? Here we go. Gertie Saves the Day. Gertie Groundhog rushed around getting ready for school. Today was not the day to be late. Mrs. Mole, her first grade teacher, had a surprise for the class. Gertie hardly slept at all. "Gertie, you'd better hurry or you'll be late for school," shouted her mum. Gertie kissed her mum goodbye, grabbed her lunch, and dashed out the door. As Gertie got closer to school, she could see Jeff waiting for her. "Hey, Shorty," teased Jeff, "want to play some basketball?" Gertie frowned. Jeff knew she was too short and was always picked last for the basketball team. "Not today," shouted Gertie as she whizzed past Jeff. "Good morning, Groundhogs," said Mrs. Mole. Gertie Groundhog sat on the edge of her seat, waiting impatiently for Mrs. Mole to announce the surprise. What could it be? A special visitor? A field trip? A class party? Mrs. Mole cleared her throat. "Groundhog Day is coming up, and we need to pick a new groundhog for the celebration," she announced. "One of you will be selected. Who can tell me about Groundhog Day?" "Groundhog Day is like Christmas, and we all get gifts," chuckled Phil. "I know," said Amber. "We can eat as much ice cream as we want." "No," said Sam. "It has something to do with the weather and a groundhog's shadow." "Sam is correct," said Mrs. Mole. "February 2nd is Groundhog Day. Each year, one special groundhog is selected to climb out of our burrow and look for their shadow." "What's so important about a groundhog's shadow?" Gertie asked. "Legend says that if a groundhog sees its shadow and runs back into the burrow, there will be 6 more weeks of winter. If the groundhog doesn't see its shadow, spring will arrive early," explained Mrs. Mole. "Reporters and photographers come from miles around to record this special event." Gertie Groundhog started to daydream about the reporters and imagined herself smiling for the cameras. "Everyone will have a chance to compete," added Mrs. Mole. "Compete?" Gertie asked nervously. "Yes, this is a competition," added Mrs. Mole. "There'll be several challenges. The groundhog that passes all of the challenges will be our winner." "That will be me," boasted Jeff. "Gertie, you won't have to worry. You're too short to have a shadow." Gertie frowned. "If I do not have a shadow," she replied, "then that means spring will come early and we can go outside and play. No more hats, scarves, and boots. That sounds good to me." That night, Gertie kept tossing and turning and thinking about the competition. She worried that Jeff was right. Maybe she was too short to win the competition. She decided to try her best and ignore Jeff's comments. "Groundhogs," called Mrs. Mole, "gather around. Your first challenge is ready. First, you will crawl under the row of chairs to the other side. Next, jump onto and out of the hula hoop 5 times. And finally, stack all 10 cups in a triangle and walk to the finish line." The groundhogs hurried to line up. Amber was first. She scurried under the chairs, but got tangled in the hula hoop. Chuck thought it would be faster to walk on top of the chairs and was disqualified. Vicky was just about to put the last cup on her triangle when she let out a big sneeze that sent the cups flying in all directions. Jeff crawled under the chairs, jumped in and out of the hula hoop quickly, and had no trouble with the cup stacking. "Easy peasy," added Jeff. Gertie took a deep breath and she scurried under the chairs, jumped in and out of the hula hoop, stacked the cups perfectly, and made it to the finish line faster than Jeff. "There is only one more challenge. It is the basketball challenge. You will have 3 chances to make a basket, and I will add the number of baskets you make to your score," Mrs. Mole announced. "Oh no," thought Gertie, "not basketball." All eyes were on Gertie. She picked up the basketball and missed the first 2 shots. Gertie Groundhog took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and took a shot. "I did it!" screamed Gertie. "Well, it appears we have a tie," said Mrs. Mole. "Congratulations to Jeff and Gertie. Tomorrow is the last challenge. You have to climb to the top of the burrow and look around for your shadow as quickly as possible." The next day, Gertie was ready. She had practiced and knew exactly what to do. She scurried to the top of the burrow confidently. She felt the cold, wet snow on her paws. Just as Gertie turned to look for her shadow, a big plop of snow fell from a branch and knocked her flat on her back. The sun was so bright that she could not see anything, least of all her shadow. She began to shiver, and her teeth began to chatter as she fell over into the snow. "Gertie, are you okay?" asked Mrs. Mole. Gertie nodded. Mrs. Mole wrote something down on her clipboard, and Gertie was sure it wasn't good. Jeff looked more confident than ever as he climbed out of the burrow and saw his shadow. He walked around slowly, smiling and waving as if photographers were watching. Mrs. Mole wrote some notes on her clipboard. "Nailed it," he bragged to Gertie. "I saw my shadow," he boasted. That afternoon, Mrs. Mole said, "I'm ready to announce our special groundhog. Both of you did an excellent job, but I can only select one of you." "Drumroll, please," Jeff chuckled. "My choice for special groundhog is Jeff," announced Mrs. Mole. "Better luck next time, Shorty," teased Jeff. Gertie slumped in her seat and tried to ignore Jeff's teasing. Groundhog Day arrived. All the groundhogs gathered outside to watch Jeff. Gertie Groundhog grumbled and sighed as she waited for Jeff to pop out from the burrow. Outside the burrow, reporters and photographers gathered. It was cold and cloudy. The sun peeked through the clouds, warming the waiting crowd. When it was time, Jeff climbed out of the burrow and didn't move. Gertie could not believe her eyes. After all of his bragging about being famous, Gertie hesitated for a minute and then hurried to his side. "What's wrong?" Gertie asked. "There are people staring at me," whimpered Jeff. "Their cameras are all flashing at the same time. I can't move." Gertie smiled and led Jeff by the hand. They walked around together while the photographers snapped their photos. The sky was dark and cloudy. "Looks like we'll have an early spring," shouted one of the reporters. Suddenly, the sun poked out from behind the clouds. "Oh no," sighed Gertie. 6 more weeks of winter." Just then, a huge cloud covered the sun. There were no shadows. "Spring will come early," announced the mayor. Everyone cheered. Ooh. "Thanks, Gertie," said Jeff, "but why were you so nice to me after all the times I called you Shorty? Groundhog Day is too important, and I didn't want to see it spoiled." "Not only did you save the day, Gertie," said Mrs. Mole, "but this was the first time we had 2 groundhogs celebrate this special day. You know what that means?" "No homework tonight?" chuckled Jeff. "No, silly," Gertie replied. "We make a great team." "You got it, Gertie." Happy Groundhog Day! I hope you enjoyed Gertie Saves the Day. It was a fun story that taught us a little bit about a celebration that happens on February 2nd, but also it was a story that talked about our feelings and situations that we might be in sometimes ourselves, like a competition. And that's what's really important about stories. Stories are important because it helps us understand our lives as well as other people's lives. So if you've never been in a competition, reading about Gertie and Jeff in a competition can give you kind of an idea of what it might feel like. If you're supposed to go into a competition and you haven't had that experience, reading about them can kind of prepare you for some of the things that might happen. So stories are important because it gives us experiences that we might not have had before, not only to understand that, but also to prepare us for when we have that story, our experience ourselves. So stories are great for that. And you know what is great when we hear a good story? Is to write a review for that story. And a review is simply something that says how much you enjoyed the story. And not only does that tell other people, hey, this is a great story, you should read it too, but it also says to the author, thank you for a great story, we hope you write some more. And we're using our book reviews that we get from you, our friends, to make a calendar for 2025. That seems like a long way away, but we have a lot of time to collect all these great book reviews, and we're going to select a number of them to go in the calendar, which will help us raise money to buy books for the children's reading room and give them a chance to give books to kids and share the love of books and reading. And I think that's great. So what you can do by creating a book review is help others pick a good book, tell the author how much you enjoyed the book and thank them and encourage them to write more, and support the Children's Reading Room, who shares books and stories with kids all over. So what a great thing to do, and all it requires is for you to draw a picture. That's right. Take a book that you like. Maybe it's Gertie Saves the Day, or maybe it's one you have at home or have borrowed from the library, and draw a picture about that book. And then maybe someone can help you write a line or two about why you liked that book or that particular part of the book. Maybe it's the part at the end where Gertie saves the day. Maybe it's the part at the beginning where she's so excited about the surprise that's coming up, and we've all felt that excitement before, so maybe that's the kind of picture you want to draw. And then just write maybe a line underneath that says, I really connected to how excited she was, or I really liked the happy ending. And then you can put your name and age on the page if you like, and send it to me either as a digital copy or in the mail. Again, there'll be a link underneath in the description to tell you where to send it, and maybe that will end up in the calendar that helps support the Children's Reading Room and gets books into the hands of kids everywhere. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed Gertie Saves the Day. Make sure to click on the link below and get a copy of it yourself, and we'll see you next time in the Kindness Kangaroo Library.